The Buddhists say everything is impermanent.
Mhm.
This is not our this is not our reality. This is not our permanent place. We grasp on this as being our reality, and we want to hold on to what we've built here, and we want to make sure we've got tomorrow or the next minute. And I think we really pile up the constructs, like, in some ways we think it's like an insurance policy to build more structure. I find myself doing that with my father. Like, just I'm very hyper vigilant about everything, which I think is important. I just have to temper it constantly with the awareness that I'm in the now moment, doing everything that is needed of his mind, body, and spirit, right? To support and hold this transition from this world to the next world. And I see him go in and out of worlds. And my boyfriend David, who's a Buddhist, he reminds me a lot. Oh, this is all part of it, Allie. Like, they go in and out of worlds. He's not really getting better. He's not getting worse. He's just sort of floating along, like this world is getting less permanent for him, and the other world is getting more vast, right?
Yes.
And so it makes us less afraid to lose our own life, and less afraid for people we love to lose theirs. We have to remember this world is fraught with pain body that we don't experience in the other planes and direct dimensions. And
Mhm.
so it is my understanding through Source and what Source downloads within me that keeping fluid, keep yourself very flexible and very fluid in this world. And you can create
Mm.
anything, right? So if you think, well, I need to be so structured because this world requires it, I don't think it does if we're masters. I think it requires a lot of structure when we think we need a lot of control, and that control can build smaller worlds.
Mm.
But I think the larger worlds that we build are through synchronicities that spirit connects us to. Like, sometimes I've been floating around just kind of doing my lower creations. And I don't mean lower in the way that they're negative. I mean just they're lower in a smaller form is a better way to say it. So, I was running a spa, and I in within that realm, I had a lot of notoriety because I'm a really good body worker because of my intuition. So I really understand healing and how to move energy and how to heal bodies, and I was also psychic, so people would see me for that psychic mind body thing. And within that world, I was connecting with the smaller circle of people, and even if I had people fly in to see me, it was still, and then I'd get a large fish, right? And it would not really come for me. I mean, other people, they manifest differently, but I'd get hit with a big fish client, and it usually didn't come from anywhere but God. Yes, it came from a referral, but like such a random one, only God could bring that person that way, right? And I think that that is our larger manifestation, synchronicity.
Mhm.
So somewhere I was like tuning into the rhythm of my abilities and tending them, but God had a bigger plan. So I would say, where is that sync up in your own lives? Like, where are you dotting the I's and crossing the T's and saying, okay, I'm building this. This is the structure I'm building. And how much flexibility do you personally have around allowing something larger to come in? And I think there is always, just within my own self and downloading spirit, I think spirit has to like navigate around my fears that all of a sudden I'm like, wait, you want to send me that? I'm not ready for that. You know, that would put me on TV. I don't want to be on TV. I don't want to. And it's weird because then you have to really face the unconscious blocks that we're putting up all the time
Mhm.
with our control issues. Sean, do you want to say anything about that? I just said a lot, but I couldn't stop. I think that was spirit. Just go.
Totally spirit. Yes. And we are having this conversation about um essentially death, fluidity, death of people in our life, and death of dreams. I think I could really feel Ali circling back to needing to let go of the spa to and that transition of death through spirit for something new to be reborn, and the fluidity of a soul in life and moving between the worlds. And I want to circle it back to like in my life, as a paramedic, I've had lots of experience with death. And actually, Michael and I were talking about this yesterday as we were traveling to hockey. And I said to him, because he's had lots of touches with his own personal death as a firefighter. And I said, were in those moments, were you afraid of death? And he said, no, he said, I was so busy on fighting the fire or doing the thing or rescuing the person that it never occurred to me that that could have been the moment. And then he and I went deeper into that. And I said, isn't it interesting that and I don't know why this is relevant, but it feels relevant, that there's this nanosecond when a person is alive versus when the soul leaves the body. And there's this breath between life and death. And I feel like that's something that would be really interesting to ask Source about, what that space is between, and how can we work with that space in a more fluid way to have more peace and less grasping.
Is that a question for me, or you asking people to explore that in
I'm
their?
I think people can explore that in themselves, but also a question for Source, Ali. Like what out of there is important for people to know of that space between life and death, and how to navigate that more
Well,
gracefully.
the space between life and death um is either all life. There really isn't a space between life and death except for the now moment of the presence of life. Does that make sense? But am I not understanding, or like, I think I know what you're saying, but I think we get out of the present moment to say questions like that, right? Because we can't
That's
be in
true.
the present moment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it makes you realize, wow, Sean really asked a great question. That's a great question, right? Because you first hear it and it sounds so profound, and you're like, whoa, yeah, what can I do in this transition of like preparing? Back to the Buddhists, because I live with one, I'm not Buddhist, but I think from all of the ancient wisdoms, there's so much to garner. And one thing I garner is that they are constantly reminding themselves any moment they can die. So he literally has these quotes that pop up a few times a day that say, "Hey, David, remember you're gonna die." And then the other times it's like, "Hey, David, you might die any moment now." I was like,
Wow.
and it is an all day thing. y'all. It is. And he digs it so much. And I'm like, ooh. Um, but there's a lot of wisdom in not losing the purpose of life is death. The purpose of
Mm,
our now moment is exactly Sean's question. So that's what makes it such a powerful question, is that is the question um,
interesting.
of every moment of our life. And I think that's the single most important question one could ask. And so I had to say, like, did you realize that? Maybe not. But the truth is, to be present in every single moment is your paying attention to what you can prepare for to die so that you can move into the next realm in the most fluid way. And if in this now moment you're at peace, and if in this now moment you're in a state of grace and love, and words that aren't as fun but equally as powerful, which is acceptance, which is a super hard word, right? Because
Hmm.
acceptance, um, for me, when I pulled those cards in the Oracle deck, I just, and I would get them a lot, by the way. So I think that, universe was like, you really got to accept life. I've really gone through life. Being such a high level psychic means I'm so sensitive to everything, like every feeling of my passing neighbor's thoughts, or walking through the grocery store and everybody's issues through the aisles. Like it's been a ride for my adrenals for sure. And so being in acceptance of that heightened level of receptivity, of sensitivity, has been not the easiest thing.
Hmm.
Right. So accepting this now moment, are you accepting this now moment, or are you afraid to accept this now moment? Because I was always like, what axe is gonna fall? Like, the world's scary. There's lots of stuff going on. And when you're tuning into a lot of people's feelings, people resonate in a lot of fear, not necessarily a lot of joy. And I wouldn't call them negative people. I just think most people are afraid of a lot of stuff. So if you're a little kid picking up on that all the time, the world gets a little bit scarier than being like, dumb luck and not being as sensitive to people's feelings. That you're more likely to notice the bee on the flower without thinking, the other person that's right next to you is afraid that bee might kill him and things of, it's easier to disconnect when you don't feel as much. Um, so we kind of, in a way, have to turn down our feelings that get super heightened from our external sensitivities and just really turn that down.
Hmm.
And that volume becomes quiet, and you can hear the truth of this now moment, which is spirit is all around us. And that's the beauty of nature. And that's the beauty of making the now moment one that you accept, and then you move into allowing it to be. And so I would say acceptance and allowance are are more important than those general juicy terms that sound so like I love them. So I know what they sound like in my body. Grace, right? Ooh, that feels good. I just said it. Grace, grace, grace. I mean, my body just electrically um, responds to that. And when I say, oh, acceptance and allowance, I'm like, ah,
Ah,
what are
I
you gonna
agree. It's
make?
like,
What are you
hmm,
gonna make me accept? What
right.
are you gonna what are you gonna force me
I,
to allow? And I have a totally
mhm.
different frequency. And it's
Yeah.
adjusting that frequency meter in my own body to say, why would I want anything less for you, Allie, than
Hmm.
to accept that grace, right? Why would I want anything less for you than to allow that grace to flow? So we have to take these very temporal, this world, three-dimensional words like acceptance and allowance,
Hmm.
make them active, and then spark them with the joy of those juicy terms like grace and love and inspiration and, divine alignment and all that juicy stuff. So that was also a big download. Thank you, Spirit. And Sean, do you have anything that comes up for you with all of that?
Well, the acceptance and allowance piece, it's actually releasing our resistance to accepting and allowing. It's like for me, I had to turn the dial down, and because I had so much resistance to accepting my current reality, it was like even that's a mastery. And then once you get to that place of accepting through the releasing of resistance, and acceptance comes, and then the allowance comes, and then the grace comes, and then the joy comes, and then the miracles come. And it's like this cascade of divine alignment.